Welcome, viewers. I am Dr. Taran Kapoor and I teach philosophy at Miranda House, University of Delhi. This lecture is on professional ethics, few case studies. We have already done an introduction to professional ethics and issues and concerns in the field. Professionals form a part of all variety of workforce in the modern age. In the activities related to development like research, design, construction, professionals play a significant role. They are confronted with many ethical issues and are supposed to find solutions, decisions based on ethical aspects of problems. Knowledge of basic ethical theories and fundamental ethical concepts can be of help to decide on the appropriate course of action, keeping in mind the basic ethical principles of beneficence, least harm, justice, respect for others, truthfulness, and non-violence. One has to decide the right course of action. Perhaps in professional life, the most important principle is to do your duty with the aim of maximizing the good. Many situations will call for action based upon consequentialist theory, whereby we find the consequences and the cost and risk factors involved. An honest risk benefit analysis is done to arrive at the right course of action. Professionals have great responsibility in taking the right decision. What the right decision to take is generally not so clear in most controversial issues. Professionals should practice ethics to arrive at the right decision. So we are going to take a few case studies. Like the first I'm going to take is of data breach. One is the actual world in which we live, and another is the world of virtual reality. So we are actually living in multiple worlds. And this world of virtual reality we have created for ourselves. In a virtual world, users provide all their information in order to avail the services provided by the particular platform. The moment we allow that platform to access all the information which is needed before login, it means that we trust that platform to be genuine. Along with the benefits we get from availing their services, our privacy always remains at risk. Despite the promises every company makes with the users, we experience the problem of data breach. What should be the ethical obligations and legal responsibilities to prevent these instances and make the network more strong, secure, and breach free? The breach of data is the breach of trust. All companies make a bond with their users by promising to provide values like accountability, cooperation, privacy, trust, among others. We often come across the news of data breach. Various companies, industries, and organizations suffer from breach of data. Despite claims of providing the service with all these values, what causes the failure of these values? The moral duty and responsibility in any profession demands the appropriateness of rules, which is equivalent to their strict liability. But the problem is, we often experience a gap between what is being written as standard norms and what is being followed on practical grounds. Talks about liability and accountability then seem redundant. The breach of data may happen in various ways. Some of the ways in which it can happen are making private information public, leaking of information like email addresses and phone numbers. Hackers hack the computer networks, the system with the help of malware in order to get access to confidential information. And recently, a data breach took place in Facebook. The case ran into International Court of Justice, and Facebook had to pay liabilities for the data breach they had conducted. One weak point that makes it easier for the hackers to leak the data can be said that it has lack of knowledge by the users. The users allow access without knowing the consequences. As a consequence, they risk their privacy and security. But even the users remain at a vulnerable position due to lack of information by the industries, organizations, or companies. So, the organization or company must have the moral responsibility to take precautionary steps so that the data can be user safe. The behavior of companies has always been reactionary rather than precautionary. As a reaction, the companies only inform their consumers about such instances of breach. That too can be delayed. Hacking is an illegal act. There are no set of standards for these unethical issues in the cyber world with a professional ought to follow. There are only some guidelines that were created in 1992 as the 10 Commandments of Computer Ethics, but those do not match with today's changing scenario because those guidelines are very vague in nature. So there has to be a set of standards so that the cyber world can be more transparent and breach of data does not take place. So an example of data breach we can say, take here. The data of millions of users of several countries were leaked from a social networking site. This data included personal information of users, contacts, information, user ID, date of birth, information of their workplaces, email addresses as well. All the data was published by a hacking forum on the dark web. The company denied that no such action is performed from their end. The data was old and already available publicly on the sites, so the data was scrapped from there only. But the issue is that this data can be misused to make fraudulent calls, send spam emails, or phishing, or in many other kinds of frauds. Once again, as a reaction, only after the data was leaked, the company said that we will try to strengthen our security systems. The question is, why no precautionary measures were taken by such a huge social networking site? Why the security was so weak that it risked privacy of the users. As a result, it made people lose their trust in that one particular company and made people skeptical in using other similar networking sites. WikiLeaks is one such organization that has been known to release the documents to unveil many illegal acts. It has become a medium for many people to express their voices and uncover the questionable acts of government. However, the sources from which these documents are obtained has always been in question. Ethical and unethical hacking. Hacking into computer systems is a common crime. Ethical hacking is conducted in order to check the security of the computer systems. This is another kind of a case study. It is conducted by experts of the company. The aim of ethical hacking is security and accessing the vulnerability of the computer systems. Ethical hacking becomes a necessary exercise to keep the computer systems free of malware by suggesting improvements and increasing security from time to time. Illegal or unethical hacking is not conducted with the permission of the company. The purpose of this hacking is to steal information and data. One cannot deny that both kinds of hacking requires expertise in terms of the knowledge. In illegal hacking, the hackers misuse their knowledge to perform a criminal act. This unethical hacking can be done for personal gains or just for fun to see the communication of people, to discourse communication of other people, or one can do it merely for business, stealing and selling the data. With most of the managements in government and private sectors going for e-governance, data security has become a big challenge. Most organizations engage ethical hackers or outsource the job of accessing the data security to experts. Many people who were illegal hackers earlier have now been engaged by organizations as white hats to check the security of their cybersecurity mechanisms. In illegal hacking, one develops the capacity to penetrate into other person's computer without the owner's knowledge. The essential objective is to create mischief or to collect data with the intent of getting some personal gains. Hacking with any kind of intent requires intimate knowledge of computer systems and their functioning. Whatever may be the purpose, illegal hacking is unethical as one is prying into data and personal information that one is not supposed to access. An example of such hacking and publication of such information is illustrated by now famous WikiLeaks. Now, there is another kind of uh, unethical conduct in profession which can take place. And one example of it will be corporate frauds. So, this case study is related to the corporate world, when corporate frauds are unethical acts performed by the company or any employee of the company. Let us suppose a fraud is done by a corporate company of computer services. The founder of this company creates several bank statements to inflate the profits and revenues that did not even exist. This process of showing fake profits lasted for 9 years. This fraud case also includes creating fake customer accounts to show the profits. The founder of the company maintains a record of fake employees and withdraws large amount of money in the name of salary of the employees that did not exist at all. And the number of these fake employees run in thousands. Now, the benefit of all this is shown in the increase in shared prices of the company. So the returns of the company are in multiple folds. So that's how the it was revealed that the company has done this kind of a fraud. It's an example of a big scam in the corporate world that can be termed as an ethical crisis. And in recent past, even in India, many of the companies, quite established companies, have shown these kinds of fraudulent ways of functioning. As an effect, it will badly affect the share market and audit firms. It also severely provides a warning to the investors who invest money in any company without investigating much about that particular company. So these kinds of scam are clear example of conspiracy, forgery, breach of trust that puts a question mark on the ethics of professionalism. It will also raise question on the disastrous system of accounting and accounting norms of a country. And the increasing numbers of such frauds highlights the application of ethical codes and values and makes us think again and again about our blind dependency on such professionals. These crimes not only damage the image of the company but also put down the image of the country. However, government understands its responsibility and plays its role as it takes some strict actions to control such big frauds by introducing acts like Companies Act, in which strict rules are introduced to govern the corporate companies. So it's important to strictly adhere to rules and norms, uh, mostly made by the institutions and companies themselves, and follow them in spirit so that these kinds of manipulations need not happen even at the individual level or at the level of the employer themselves. So the micro and the macro decision making and levels of ethical conduct are maintained in tandem with the aims and future of the company. So there is always a way forward in these kinds of ethical dilemmas and situations at hand. In every profession and even in the corporate world, we find certain set of norms and principles to run the profession smoothly and free of any obstacle. These codes of conduct can be traced back to the amalgamation of the fundamental principles of ethics, which are named as the utilitarian principle of Mill and Bentham, or the non-consequentialism or deontological ethics of Immanuel Kant, or the virtue-based ethics of Aristotle. Even the goals, pursuits of life given in the Indian philosophical systems, we'll see a concept like Purusharth, which is the pursuit of life. And we can be enumerating them as follows. Arth, the word in Sanskrit, means that which one seeks. Whatever material wealth one needs to support their life and feel secure can be considered as earth. Earth is having a broad sense. It includes mental health, professional work, job, property, all other physical comforts that individual earns in this lifetime. The second Purushartha is calm. Calm is that pleasure which individuals seek from earth or the material wealth such as food, property and relationships. To satisfy this urge for pleasure, man accumulates earth or material wealth. Accumulating earth for calm or worldly pleasures would be linked then to ethical behavior. Now, how are they reaching ethical behavior as a guiding norm from earth and calm? That is pretty important to understand. When one is ready to forego everything else for earth and calm, then they are violating all the ethical principles. Therefore, individuals should guard themselves against their pursuit of material wealth and physical pleasures in order to follow the path of dharma. Dharma being the penultimate purusharth. And of course, there is the final purusharth, which is moksha. But we are not discussing moksha because then it is a pursuit of the higher life, and in terms of intellectual pursuit we are going to understand dharma, which means to support and sustain the human life. It includes all those canons that help one maintain the universe. It is about sustainability of life in this world. An individual living in this society, along with individuals and other life forms, needs to operate in the guidance of dharma. Every life form has an equal right to love, so every conduct of individual should support this idea. Dharma is that which sustains and maintains life. Dharma, thus, is a set of rules, guidelines, principles for living one's life such that society is sustained and maintained. Dharma lists the basic rules and canons to the individual and society so that both are maintained. They are rules for living one's life. Like Immanuel Kant's emphasis on duty and obligation, according to ancient Indian wisdom, an individual himself has a duty and obligation towards himself as well as the society. So, if the traditional Indian wisdom, dharma, provides us with that penultimate objective and purpose of life with which we should lead all our artha and kama pursuits. So, being a professional in a public and professional life, we need to be guided in the light of dharma, which always tells us to fulfill our obligations in the light of the action which is in front of us. So, the code of conduct based on these principles can be generically enumerated in the following ways. Number one, it can be seen as one should always keep the public philanthropic good in the mind. One should not use the knowledge and expertise for any kind of illegal gains or manipulative gains, selfish gains. One should be courageous enough to fight against the corrupt elements in the system in which they are working. So, the profession itself might demand them to work towards the upliftment of the institution for which they are working, whereby even bringing out the corrupt elements in the system to the fore or light. For example, we just saw the example of the engineer who was working on the highway project, brought out the corruption in the system to the Prime Minister of India. So, one should be acquainted with the rights of their profession. They should also be able to exercise those rights with utmost comfort and ease. They should, their conduct should be transparent. Their relationships with the other professional colleagues need to be based on honesty and respect. One should work for the betterment of their own institution and of the society at large. Now, all these codes are devised keeping in mind the concepts of honesty, loyalty, thinking of maximizing the betterment for all, to do the right thing and avoid the wrong. So, raising voice against the wrong acts is what is important. And we have discussed in great length about whistleblowing as a practice, where you require to speak up against the uh, organization or institution in which you are working if you realize that there are certain malpractices or certain inappropriate actions which are taking place. So you need to highlight them. There are several crucial questions at this juncture. Why there still exists a huge gap between what is conceptually accepted in all professions and what is practically implied. So we see, as an area of applied ethics, we have to understand that conceptually, theoretically, there are always norms, principles which are set in the guidelines of any profession. But when it comes to follow the profession, we realize that practical implementation is poor, and people are not always, so this is not a generalization for each and every professional, but then yes, people are many times guided by their selfish motives and money and other constraints while acting in their professions. Now, also, there is another significant question why the adherence of virtues like truth, honesty, courage, temperance, modesty, righteousness, patience has become so difficult in our lives. Where does the fault lies? In the individual or in the structure of the society that the society trains every individual in such a way that everyone thinks about his or her own benefit at the cost of harming other human beings, animals, and the environment. So, why is it happening that the societal structure of moral norms and ethical conduct is not followed by individuals in an imperative manner? Now, why human beings have become so incapable of thinking over and above their own personal gains? Why we are moving towards a human centric, individual centric world day by day without any concern for the future generations and all the other species? We may always claim that there is no harm in thinking about and to act for personal gains. That is how we will be able to secure the future of our next generations. But it can never allow us to use improper, illegal, or unethical means to achieve those gains. It should not be exercised at the cost of harming others, cheating on others, or by doing any other act which cannot be called right on the ethical grounds and which is not acceptable in the society. Our ethical conduct is based on the values we acquire from different sources. So, in recent times, a kind of decay has been observed in the value systems of the society. We see many instances in our daily life where declining of values can be clearly observed. For instance, no respect for elderly, not following rules and norms, careless driving, casual behavior in public. So, there is a reason why more emphasis is being given on imparting value based education as an essential element to students in school and colleges. And more investment should be done in ethical or ethics based education to the modern youth. The nature of this value education should not be static. It should be a dynamic concept so that it can give freedom to think about all the other kinds of possibilities in the modern society. Whenever we talk about any ethical principle, we always speak in terms of relation between the self and the other. Extremely important point with which we started our lectures. The ethical space cannot be conceived in isolation. So remember, a profession is profession of interrelation. So if we talk about doctor and patient, a doctor is a doctor in relation to the patient, or a lawyer is a lawyer in relation to the client they are serving. And then, of course, the bigger institution of court in which they are going to plead or argue for their client. So all these notions of duty, rights, responsibility presuppose the notion of other person or other institution because all these notions lie in the ethical space where without the idea of relation these terms will become completely meaningless. This other can be a human being or a group of people, any organization, company, or any other species or even environment. The relation is obvious in any subcategory of ethics. Professional ethics, too, functional on the notion of the relation between self and the other. Otherwise, it will make no sense to talk about ethics in profession or in any other domain of ethics, even. So, the relation is obvious that we need to understand the self and the other and the interrelationality between the two. How we conceive the other is extremely important to make up our mind about how much are we going to be ethical in our conduct. Professional ethics is an essential element for every profession, needless to say. It provides certain codes of conduct for proper functioning of a profession, apart from learning skills and acquiring practical training, which are requirements of becoming a professional. Ethical behavior is equally necessary. Ethics in any profession is important in order to prevent the society from unethical and illegal activities like data breach, corporate frauds, illegal hacking. The ethical codes and rules help a profession maintain a healthy image, and this good image strengthens the profession in the long run. The ethical codes are based on conventional ethical principles, but the domain of applied ethics makes us think on these principles in a new light When we deal with any issue related to applied ethics, we see that the bottom up approach helps us in formulating our understanding based on the actual ground experiences of people practicing a particular profession. Different issues of different domains of applied ethics demand to think critically and reflectively, considering the whole situation, taking all the facets of a situation into account. Apart from reflective thinking on the problem, the codes of conduct of professional ethics will be actualized only once we are able to understand the relatedness of self with the other. An ethical agent will always demand a coherent relation of the self with the other. That's why there are traditionally there are all the philosophical systems have emphasized on the nature of self and tried to understand the relation of the self with the interrelationality of the other. So we will see that if we are respectful of the other, if we are considering the other as part of us, as one other, and this notion of oneness and the very important system of Indian philosophy, Advaita Vedanta, talks about oneness with nature, with others, and Brahman as the only reality. We realize that there is absolutely no conflict when it comes to treatment of the other, because the other is but you. And in this case, there is then no ethical dilemma or no problem which arises in as far as our responsibility towards the other are considered. So, I will conclude by sharing a list of references with the viewers, and our understanding can be enhanced by reading through these books. With this, we come to an end of this lecture on professional ethics. Thank you.